Welcome to Pratidwani, where we try to humanize science. I am your host, GV Pawan Kumar. It's my absolute pleasure and delight to welcome today's guest on Pratidwani, Dr. Shubashree Desikan. Uh, Desikan actually has been an outstanding physicist who has kind of transformed herself into a journalist, and she has been involved in various different outlets, including the Hindu. And in recent times, she has been an associate editor at the Shaastra magazine, which is a fantastic magazine coming out of IIT Madras. Shubashrees has also been a member of editorial team of Confluence, and I have the privilege of interacting with Shubashrees on that platform too. And I have learnt a lot about very interesting aspects of both physics and its interface with journalism, having listened to Shubashri on various different platforms. She is an award-winning, national award-winning, journalist on science communication, awarded in 2016, and she has a varied interest, including mathematical and physical sciences, and its a broader implication on society. And she's also actively involved in women in physics, women in science, and various different aspects related to gender equality in sciences. And importantly, Shubhashri also writes not only in English but also in Tamil, and she's also a translator, and she's also a poet. And has a very sharp ear, and also words for very interesting poetry, which we are going to also discuss at some point of time. With this brief introduction, I welcome Shubhashri on Pratidwani. Yeah,
Thank you so much, Pawan, for that generous introduction.
yeah,
And
my pleasure, my pleasure. So Shubhashri, a PhD in physics, and then transforming yourself into a journalist. I before we get into the origins, I want to know how is it to be the interface of these two important things.
it's a very mixed bag, actually, Pawan, because, being a physicist gives me both an advantage in writing physics for the popular
Yeah.
levels. It is also a handicap in the sense that I take a
Mm,
lot for granted. So many times my editor berates me, you're thinking like a physicist and not like a journalist. So the questions that matter to people,
yeah.
all those things take training to learn. I mean, people don't go to J school for nothing, and
Mm, mm,
they do. There's a rigorous training there, which is very important, which I completely missed out.
mm.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and uh, that's the main thing. I think that
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. Just like research,
Yeah.
there are a lot of parallels between the lifestyle you lead as a researcher and the
Mm,
lifestyle you lead as a journalist. So there are a lot of things that are already solved for us
mm.
when you make this shift.
Wonderful. We're going to really, pick your brains on this specific aspect of the transition, because also it also occupies two different universes in a sense, but connecting them is equally important and interesting. But we'll get started with your origins, Shubhashri. Tell us a little bit about your foundations, your kind of upbringing, and your exposure to your kind of the base of knowledge what you have actually gained over the years.
I think my parents kind of molded me into taking up a life in science quite early in life. They got me this encyclopedia when I
Mm,
was just six or maybe less than that. And there were these 12 volumes of
mm.
fantastic knowledge over there. Volume 2 was science, and volume 11 was mythology, our favorite one.
Nice.
Me and my cousins used to all the time be reading, devouring these books. And
Mm,
in volume 2, there were actually, all this Big Bang theory, steady
mm,
state theory, origins of the universe, models. They were all there. I knew them very early in life, though I didn't understand much of it, but
mm.
there were beautiful pictures and all that. So I think that was a very strong influence in my life. There was also philosophically speaking, another thing. There was a story about how the sun is going to last only for 5 billion years. So there was this five with so many zeros after it. And so that was, at that age, it was completely shocking
Mm,
how. something you think is so eternal is going to end one day. And so it made me see science as some kind of a way of coming to terms with the impermanence of things in some
Things.
sense, so there's more to science than just scoring in the class and all that, always for me. So those were the origins. And then uh, later, school was very good. So I liked almost all the subjects in science except maybe chemistry. Chemistry was always a bugbear for
Mm,
me.
mm,
Like, because maths was, I think I was in love with math.
mm,
I should have taken up maths, but somehow I took up physics. I don't know how. I even scored very highly in maths and all that.
mm, mm,
Then I went to college. I had applied. I was praying that I shouldn't. I believe in prayer somehow, despite being a science person.
mm.
So I used to pray even when I was a kid that I shouldn't get into engineering or medicine. My
Oh
family
man.
is rife with all these professionals, and they used to lead such a tough life that I was really very scared of getting into a professional college and chartered accountants and all that. My
Mm,
father
mm.
was a cost accountant. So
Oh,
I
okay.
was averse to all these fields and I wanted to do only physics or maths.
Mm,
And so I had applied to two colleges in Chennai.
mm,
That time, the thought of going abroad or going to Delhi to St. Stephen's or something like that was not really
mm,
uh, very much in our minds.
mm,
So the first college I applied was at Stella Maris,
mm,
and they said you have got more than 99% in math. I got 199 out of 200, I think, in math. So they said with this mark you'll surely go off to engineering. So
mm.
I won't give you a seat. The principal told me.
Wow.
So it is paradoxically the getting more marks was working
Yeah.
against me in that sense. So I took physics in a different college, and so that was how I started studying. Then what else?
This was in Chennai, right? This was in
This
Chennai.
is
You
all
grew
in
up?
Chennai.
Chennai, all in Chennai.
Chennai, both are women's colleges. Stella
Oh, okay.
Maris is like a very hi-fi college,
Very, very reputed. Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
well known and very reputed. I think all those things make differences to the way your career shapes up also. So probably if I'd gone to Stella, I would have taken up mathematics and gone into a completely different. So it's like the chaos theory. A small
Mm,
change can completely alter your life in many ways. So uh, then there was this postgraduate level. There was this program that TIFR had with
mm,
jointly with Pune University. For a few years, they wanted to get the students very young
mm,
and teach them how to do research and all that. So they had a joint teaching program and all that. I joined that. There was an exam and all that. I got into that, but unfortunately, I fell ill during the first semester and I came home. I was given a break here for by force
mm,
because of that. And then I joined Madras University. During my holidays, I worked out mathematics from a book by Thomas. Mathematics was still my favorite at
mm,
that time.
mm, mm.
Then I joined Madras University, completed my MSc, then went to math science for my PhD.
IMSC, Institute
IMSc,
of Mathematical Sciences. Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
It was
Nice.
fondly known as math science those
Math
days.
science. Yeah, yeah.
Then it came to be known as IMSc, and now people say mathematical sciences and all that. It's
Yeah,
grown in stature since then. It
yeah.
was a small institute then. Um, their life completely altered. I'll wait for
Mm.
your next question before I
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah. We'll come to those points. Before we really get into even the realm of your college, paint us a picture about your home. In fact, you are already exposed to encyclopedia. That's very interesting to know. How was it at home? What are the kind of what are the kind of ideas? What are the kind of environments to which you were exposed to? Uh, how did it really actually get you interested in science to begin with? Because for sure there should be some spark within the family or even external school or something like that, which would have encouraged you to do that. Could you just let us know a little bit about that?
Yeah, school was very good. We
Mm,
had very good teachers in all subjects except even language. English, we had very good teachers.
mm, mm,
And uh, probably, I mean, they were kind of kind also. Most of them were kind teachers, which is more than can be
mm,
expected in many cases. So that gave us the opportunity to flower out a little bit. Um, at home, the environment was like my father was very keen on getting me to read. I was the only child. I am an
mm,
only child. I don't have any siblings. I was very close to one bunch of cousins of mine.
mm,
Used to be very bookish. So we were all very bookish at that time. Our main
mm.
entertainment was either books or play. There
Play.
was
Yeah,
no
yeah,
distraction that way. So before the time of cell phones and so many gadgets and all that, right? So
yeah.
childhood
True.
was mainly in summer holidays. We used to be flooded with books. We
Mm,
used to read Enid Blyton, Nancy Drew, and uh, all those Roddy Doyle. What's that? Not Roddy Doyle. Roald Dahl,
Roald Dahl, Roald Dahl. Yeah, yeah.
Alfred Hitchcock. All those books were lying around. We used to be members of lending libraries and
Mm, mm,
used to get books and read them. So my father would particularly wanted to shape me into a science person
mm,
because he was also a physics graduate, and these were the dominant influences at that time. My cousins were a little older than me. One cousin was 1 year older, and the others were 3 or 6 years older.
six.
So they were all. My uncle was a neurosurgeon, and
Mm,
so there was a lot of science we could talk. Even in their house, whenever I visited them, the dining table will be full of talk about medicine, and so he was grooming his children to be doctors.
doctors. Yeah. Mm.
And I was also caught in the thing. I was also expected to follow in that stream, actually. So there
Okay.
was a lot of, I knew the names of all the veins that were running in the body and things like
Okay.
that time. So those were the main influences. Uh,
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So, that plays a very important role, right? Because while upbringing, if you have some kind of mild encouragement towards being kind of towards science, at least if not anything, no discouragement in really asking questions and things like that, that becomes a very critical role. Uh, uh, Chennai also holds a very unique place in that way. I find that it's a city which has uh, very high regards for sciences. Also has a very rich history in various different aspects of science, including physics, I should mention, and mathematics, of course.
yeah.
Was that also an important part of your upbringing, where the city also had some role in terms of some visit or something like that, where you used to actually go and things like that?
Well, yes and no.
Mm,
In school, there were all these inter-school competitions,
mm,
which we used to go to. Yeah. So once what happened was there was this inter-school science talent competition. We had to make models, working models of something. So most people would do, uh, charts, and they would explain with that and things like that. So what I did was make a uh, electronic voice transmitter.
mhm,
So there
mhm.
was this Indian bank had some prize they gave for. I mean, you had to save up money and get some. Then there was a lottery or something, and you will get
Mm,
a prize for it. The
mhm,
prize they
mhm.
gave was a science kit, which
Nice.
is what I got. And the science kit had many electronics things that you could make. So I made this voice transmitter, and so one of my friends, she just wanted to bunk school, so she joined me, and both of us went for this competition. And unfortunately, just before going, I had spoken to someone who said there was something called a ferrite rod that you put inside the tuner, right, to tune
Mm,
the.
yeah, 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 right, yeah.
So ferrite, I thought was a carbon rod for some reason. Somebody told me that, and I said, so. But I mean, carbon does it doesn't make sense at all, right?
Yeah,
It's
it's
an
iron. Yeah,
iron
yeah,
thing, and it cuts the flux tubes.
yeah.
Now we know, looking back. But then I didn't know, and when the judge came and asked me to explain, I explained everything, but this I messed up. So I didn't get the prize for it. But it was great fun. The kids loved
Mm.
it. They would take the radio far away, and then they would say all kinds of things, and so the transmitter was working like a nice radio station. So
Nice.
they pretended to be uh, a radio jockey and things like that. So kids had real fun with this contraption. And am I clear what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah. Very
saying?
loud and clear. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think the person who got the prize was a small boy who was, we were on in 12th class then. He had a cycle wheel. With
Mm,
that, he had made a gyroscope. So he would sit on a turntable and then
mm.
rotate
Hold
the
it. Yeah,
spin the wheel, and he would go round and round and change the speed and things like that by lowering the
yeah.
gyroscope and all that. So
Transfer of momentum in this. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
conservation of momentum.
Momentum.
So
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
a principle and all that. So it was a very nice prize they got. So that boy took our addresses from both me and my friend,
Mm,
and he sent a card later on, a very nice card with lot of dazzling stuff on it and all that one. And a very nice card it was, saying
mm.
that we would like to keep in touch with you and things like that. But what happened was, one day I went to school and this card has come home, and my mother was waiting outside the home. And when I reached home, there was a hell to pay. She said, "Who's this boy who's writing letters to you?" So we had a very strict parenting
Yeah,
regime.
yeah. Doing science is tough.
Yeah, doing science is tough, but
Nice,
that was
nice.
a funny incident.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, were you already kind of inclined because I know that you had some kind of preference towards mathematics. It's evident. Was that seeded when you were in school, or was it later that you really developed a little deeper interest in mathematics and physics?
Hmm. I think it was, I went for a tuition class
Hmm.
during my 12th exam.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, so there was a professor from Vivekananda College who used to teach us. So his way of teaching would be just to work out. We will all sit in a circle and
Hmm.
we'll work out problems. He will he will work it out and also verbally call out
Yeah,
each
call it out.
step.
Hmm.
But we would do this. So he used to encourage me quite a lot and say that you're doing it even before I say it and all that.
Hmm.
So that was quite encouraging. And then came the TIFR thing. So three of us from that math group, we landed up in the TIFR program.
Nice, very nice.
So there was something there. I think uh, my parents paid a lot of attention to what kind of teaching I got and all that. So
Hmm.
that would have been probably instrumental in shaping my math interest.
Tell us a little bit about your mother, Shubashri. We have talked about your father because she generally doesn't get highlighted. Of course, unless there is an explicit kind of question. But I do want to ask about your mother because to have anybody go into science, either a girl or a boy. It's of course the father might take some initiative, but mother would have much bigger role
Mm.
either implicitly or explicitly. I just want to capture that point of view and also give emphasis to that. Could you please just let us know a little bit about that? Yeah.
Yeah, my feelings for my mother are very strong. That's the basic thing. Like, have you seen the movie Sardari Begum?
No, no,
Sham
no.
Benegal's.
Shan Benegal. Yeah, I've heard about it. I haven't. Maybe I've seen. I don't recollect now because I don't want to say yes and be wrong.
Okay.
But yeah, yeah. Yeah. You let me know. Let me know. Yeah,
Yeah,
please
okay.
continue.
That was just in passing. That was
Uh,
like, even there, the girl, she doesn't realize the greatness of her mother till it's too late
Too
almost.
late. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So thankfully, I should say that I realized the greatness of my mother at some point.
Nice.
My mother is very driven, and she's very, at the age of 50, she started a entrepreneurship business.
Wow, wonderful. What did she do? Like,
She was like, this was a plastic molding factory.
wow,
So when
nice.
she was 50, and she's 24 years older than me, sorry.
Mm.
uh, she started this thing in collaboration with a cousin of mine, the one whom I mentioned, this the woman, uh,
Mm,
the my sister.
mm,
They started this in collaboration, but my cousin was mainly giving her moral support.
mm.
Mainly, my mother did the whole thing, and she won state awards for this entrepreneurship twice, both from Jayalalitha
Wow.
and from Karunanidhi, actually, two rival politicians.
Now that is a unique achievement, right? On the either side of
Absolutely.
the political spectrum, if you want to get.
Yeah.
Wow, this should be, in news. In it should be. Please name your mother. Please name your mother. This is
Her name
important.
is Prema Desikan.
Prema
Prema.
Desikan. Yeah.
And yeah, so her parents had those days when they were naming people very Janaki and Saraswati.
Yeah.
My mother was called Prema, which was very nice.
Yeah.
Uh,
Nice.
but she's a very tough customer, despite
Mm-hmm.
all this. And then, okay, after she was 75, she couldn't do this business any longer.
Mm-hmm.
So not 75, sorry, around 65 or something, she stopped this
Yeah.
and sold the business. And then she started entrepreneurship promotional association for women. She's trained about 100 women entrepreneurs in this, and many of them have gone on to get awards and things like that. Uh,
Why is this not well known, Shubashri? I'm just a rhetoric question, but even
oh,
otherwise,
she's
I
been
assume it is well known in Tamil Nadu at least. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
she's been interviewed by newspapers and all that. She used to walk into the Hindu and all that those days before I joined.
Nice, nice.
So she used to, like, she was that driven. Actually, one funny thing happened when I was when I was doing my MSc. Uh, I first joined Meenakshi College for MSc,
Mm, mm.
and then I got into Madras University. So I wanted to leave and join the Madras University group. And the principal said you have to get no objection certificate from no objection signature from some 23 people. Some people had taught me, some people hadn't taught me, but it was just a way of making things difficult for you.
Difficult. Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
that Saturday, my mother took an auto rickshaw, and
Mm,
we went to Tambaram. Those are all real places that are really far away. We went to each of these people's houses because it was Saturday,
mm.
and we had to get the signature, and so we did all that. Without my mother, I wouldn't have done my postdoc, my PhD at all.
PhD. Yeah, yeah.
It was her dream that I should do MSc, PhD, and all that. So partly at some point in my PhD, which we'll come to a little
Yeah,
later,
yeah. We'll come to that. We'll come to that.
uh, I've always thought that I'm doing this for my mother in some sense.
Nice.
So that's my mother. Have I told you enough about my mother?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. This is something which we should always capture because this is the essence of Pratidwani, humanizing the science. And these are the stories which doesn't get into any chapter, any article, anywhere. And this is precisely the point of doing Pratidwani. To be very frank, thank you very much for this wonderful kind of overview. Uh, so going forward in timeline, Shubashri, then I see that you already have been developing these interests. Your college also has some kind of encouragement, and you're finishing up your MSc in Madras University, which is again a very established institution with very rich legacy. It's also a state-run university, if I'm correct, right?
Yes.
I also studied in a state-run university, Bangalore University, MSc. It has its own charm and also its own negatives, so to speak. Give us a gist about Madras University during your time. How was it? Because MSc is a very crucial junction. That's where you go from an undergraduate kind of musing into serious thoughts about physics. And I just want to know that particular phase of how it was.
Yeah. Um, Madras University was excellent at one point in time, say 40 years ago or something like
Mm,
that.
mm.
It was really good, and all the top people were there, and even Professor Bhaskaran,
Oh,
he spent some time in Madras University and all that.
wonderful, wonderful.
But by the time I joined, it was becoming slightly, there was funding crunch and
Mm, mm.
people hiring had not been happening and things like that. So it was facing some problems, but still, there were some pretty good people there who taught really well. Uh, I remember when I went to my interview at Math Science,
Mm.
PhD interview. So they were saying, so are these, they would write these equations and say, can you identify these equations? Those were
Mm.
the kind of questions we were asked. And I said, these are Maxwell-Proca equations.
Wow.
Like that. So they
You
said,
named
where
it.
have you been reading all this? So there was this book, what is that? Bogolibo Shirko or
Well,
something.
oh, okay, okay.
So
The
strange
Russian, the
books, Russian books.
Russian lineage, Mir publication.
Yeah. So we had all these people who are teaching us from books like this.
Nice.
So it was a lot of interesting things. And my best part of the thing was my colleagues, my classmates. So there was a person called Chitra there, R. Chitra,
Hmm.
who's now with ETH, I think, Zurich. She's got a job there.
Okay, okay.
She did her PhD in CTS, Center for Theoretical Sciences, in
Sciences in.
Bangalore,
Oh, yes. Okay, okay, okay. In ISC.
IAC. Yes,
ISC. Yeah, yeah,
she
you're
did
good.
it
Yeah.
with Deepti Sen,
51 cent. Okay, okay, okay.
and so we both were very enthused about, very serious about science. We used to go for concerts together,
Hmm.
used to do all this. So that was, I think, a great. Impetus. It gave
Impetus.
us
Yeah.
some impetus to study and all that. So on the train to our PhD interviews and all that, we read A Brief History of Time.
Mm, mm.
So crazy that we did. Imagine reading that on a train as though you understood anything at all. But it was such fun. She would tell me about black holes and things like that.
Mm,
So
mm.
we would, it was really a very stimulating environment because of that. That was Madras
Wonderful.
University.
Very nice, very nice. In fact, since you mentioned Brief History of Time, that is probably the one book at least the generation where there was not yet the internet, which I also belonged to when I was growing up to the finish of my PhD. Almost, of course, in PhD there was basic internet. We put our stuff online, but this kind of exposure to books and also the information, although it was on premium, there was also a self kind of filtration which used to happen. Only the good ones, at least at a university level, if they were recommended. For example, I came across Feynman lectures when I was undergraduate, and there are also very good books. For example, the mathematical physics books, most of the time they are not that well kind of exposed during the undergraduate, but when at MSc you have to learn, right from all the integral equations, etc., up to the stage where you are group theory and set theory, etc. All those things you do get exposed. So how important was reading in that phase of your career, especially at master's level? Because I'm asking this, I'm also trying to preempt your thoughts as a journalist, because that becomes an important point. And connected to that also is, I haven't asked, is the language. Most of the stuff I assume you're still reading in English, but you may have also got very good exposure in Tamil, which I really want to get your overview of. Yeah.
That happened later, actually,
Oh,
during
okay.
PhD.
Hmm,
During
hmm.
my MSc, I was still reading. Uh, uh, um, Actually, in school, I learned Hindi. We
Oh,
studied
okay.
Hindi in school. So I could never speak a word of Hindi, but I could write and read
Right.
perfectly. And the speaking happened when for my postdoc, I went to my Harishchandra Research Institute
Oh,
and
HRI. Okay, okay.
HRI and
Yeah.
IIT
Prayagraj.
Prayag.
Prayagraj.
Yes,
Now
now
Prayagraj.
it's
Then it was
Prague.
Allahabad. HRI Allahabad. Yeah.
It's still Allahabad in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. So there we used to speak with the milkman, with the vegetable
Ah.
vendor and everybody. So then something broke and I
Mm.
started speaking Hindi. So Tamil was also like that when I told you about my cousins and
Yeah. Yeah.
my uncle who was a neurosurgeon, my
Mm.
aunt and all that. So I went and stayed with them for a month during my childhood.
Mm.
They were in Tanjavur that time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And
Mm.
so they said, why do you waste 1 month? You just go to school and sit there. So those days that was possible. They could just make you sit
Yeah.
in class and all that. So I went to class and they were teaching Tamil alphabet there. And that was the start of my Tamil. After that, I learned the alphabet by myself and
Mm.
started reading magazines, things like that. So because you're in Tamil Nadu, so
Yeah. Yeah.
this is a great exposure. All you need to do is to be open to it, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So that way I picked up Tamil. I used to read quite a lot, but mostly magazines only.
Mm. Mm.
It was in during my PhD when I went through a period of searching,
Mm.
obviously, which was needed for me to change
Mm.
careers later
Mm.
on. Uh, uh, that was when I read a lot of different types of books, like from Kafka to
Wow.
Louis
Nice.
Borges to uh, you know, Towards a Non-Brahmin Millennium by
Mm. Mm.
Gita and Rajadurai,
Mm.
political books, and Jean-Paul Sartre. I think that was probably a defining book that I could say
Mm.
shaped my thinking. Nausea and
Mm.
all those things. At that time, I read uh, a lot of Tamil also.
Mm.
So that
Wonderful,
was
wonderful, wonderful. So now tell us the transition, because a decision to go into PhD is not a trivial decision to make. It would, of course, not only require the backing from the family, which I assume you had, but also a personal decision, because that is a time where you already are, at a level where you can take some decisions on your own. So if somebody is getting into PhD, and I always tell this, partly, or in a great sense, mainly an individual decision, because generally, at least in Indian society, parents are not so keen to tell that you should do a PhD. As long as you have done a master's, they're already kind of sufficiently hopeful that their child is going to actually go ahead and do something, which means that there is also a personal element of doing a PhD. Of course, you did mention that your mother also had this inclination for you to join PhD. So tell us how that happened in terms of joining. What was the thought process in your mind, and what is the reason you got into PhD in physics?
joining was the easiest actually
Yeah.
because
Mm.
uh, I there was no major decision in my life.
Mm.
After BSc, MSc, the natural progression was PhD.
Mm.
My mind. But
Mm.
paradoxically, my dad, while he supported it, my mother was against it at that time, actually, quite strangely.
Interesting. Mm.
Yeah, because she felt that signing off 5 years or 6 years of your life
Mm.
is not really. This is a time when you should get married and things like that. So she was all right with MSc, but after that she was not
Mm.
too. So there was that tension at home. Every day, when every week, so I stayed in the hostel because my parents lived very far away, and
Oh, is it? Okay.
so that was another struggle to
Mm.
break away from home every weekend and come here and all that. Then my dad had a heart attack during that time.
Okay.
So that personal stress and then
Mm.
the pressure of having to make a living.
Mm.
I
Mm.
I'm an only child, as I told you, and
Mm.
so I had to find a way to earn my living. And the PhD didn't look like it was going to lead to a job. Those days we had a massive stipend of about 1,800 rupees or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it wasn't like anywhere near the kind of money you get today. But you could manage still living in a
Mm.
hostel, everything is subsidized and all that. But there was no, and very few institutes, jobs were scarce.
Mm.
So we really didn't know what to do that time. There was no proper guidance. There's no one to tell you what to do and all that those days. Uh,
True.
So that
And
was
there
a
was no chat GPT also.
I know no chat GPT, no one to chat with.
Chat with also, it's so clear. It's very, very correct. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, in fact, we were talking about the gender aspect of it,
Mm,
right? So I think one major flaw that time was, I don't know if it still exists, there
mm.
weren't people to talk to.
You're very right. Very correct. Yeah.
I don't know if it still is like that, but uh,
Yeah, because now on the other side of the fence, being a faculty member and a professor, I see that there is more avenues for students to kind of interact. But the inner thinking, you never know, because it's very difficult to grasp what it is. But at least institutionally there is some understanding and an acknowledgement that it's not only about the journey of the single person. It's also taking along the whole person, not just as an intellectual being but also a social being. I think many of the institutions are very cognizant to that, and there are also policies from the government which probably are indicating towards that. But there is surely a lot more to do in this direction, because the sensitivity of each individual is very different. And
yeah.
yeah, that's true, yeah.
So I remember there was a very bleak phase in my towards my third year or fourth year of PhD, just before I started writing. Uh, when I used to go to the library, I used to go to the place to for lunch and everything, and most of it was so lonely. It was
Mm,
so I would sit on a table and eat without talking to anyone and come back. It was a very bleak
mm,
situation, and all these pressures added up to make me really, wonder what am I doing, and there's no other go. You have to go on. At the
yeah,
fourth year, you can't stop and say that.
yeah,
And I had a very excellent guide actually. So this was R. Shankar,
yeah. Okay, okay.
who's retired now. So he stood by me during those periods of. It was like a
Nice.
long tunnel that's turning towards the end, so you can't see
Mm,
the light at the end of the
like
tunnel at all until you turn the thing. So uh, it was like that for nearly 4 years in my PhD was like that. And then with the help of Shankar, support of
mm,
Shankar and all that, I wrote up and went on to a postdoc also. But then I was feeling very stupid. I read a lot during that time and I had to think of what else I could do. And I thought, and what was the next best thing I loved to, mathematics or whatever, physics and maths.
mm,
And I just came up with English because I had excellent English teachers and
mm,
very great textbooks from which I had learned in school. I really thought of my school days during that time because I needed to redo this
mm.
whole
All.
science was like a pillar in my life, okay? So I had to go to the bottom of the pillar, and
Mm,
school days was when I really had a different thing. So, and English, that's when I thought I would do something in English. So I took up jobs in copy editing.
mm, mm. We'll come to
And
that point. One second, because
yeah,
there is some specific questions I also want to ask during the PhD phase.
sure.
What is the kind of problem you were working on during the PhD? Specifically, what is the kind of questions you were interested in during that time? To just get a gist of the the thought process during that time and the questions you were interested in.
Okay.
Mm,
So the very first encounter with this was I went and asked Shankar whether he's interested in taking any students,
mm.
and he gave me a paper to read this by Wen Wilczek and Z on anions.
Oh, anions. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I got very excited by that, and
Hmm.
I read it for some time. And he said, I don't know whether I'm going to join. He was, I think, a postdoc at that time.
Oh, is it?
He
Okay,
said, I
okay.
don't know whether I'm going to join or not. I have an offer, but I have to think about it. And he was based in Kanpur, but he used to
Mm,
visit here. So I said, okay, in the meantime, you read this. And he gave me this paper. I got all excited and I thought I was going to work on anions when he comes back and all that. And then he came back and then he said, I said, I've been reading this and all that.
mm,
And he said, Oh yeah, and then he just took that paper, put it aside, and said, "I'm going to." I'm think he gave me a file full of papers he had collected on antiferromagnet. He said, "Read this," and he gave me this
On what topic? On what topic? I missed it.
antiferromagnets, quantum.
Antiferromagnetism, quantum condensed matter. Yeah.
Yes,
Mm,
two-dimensional quantum antiferromagnets,
mm, mm,
Heisenberg model.
mm.
So yeah, so then that turned out to be the field in which I did my PhD.
Nice.
Uh, that's how I got into that thing.
So, how was your intellectual journey? Of course, you have mentioned about the other aspects, but that is an exposure, as you mentioned. It's also kind of sometimes lonely. Of course, there is a requirement of solitude during PhD, which is a very positive aspect of thinking, but loneliness is not. And this is a dilemma a lot of people do actually come across while trying to do any in-depth work. It's not just only PhD. PhD is just an example, and I can talk a little more confidently because being in the system and also being through that. And I find that is a point where you would be able to also sometimes be very self-reflective, done properly, of course. It is a great way to connect with yourself. It also actually gives you a room to be a little bit more philosophical. I'm not saying this philosophical from a moral philosophy viewpoint, but an analytical philosophy, because there are questions you have to really address during a PhD will have to go into the heart of the matter and sometimes really grasps things from a slightly more in-depth viewpoint, where you have to address the question of why this question is relevant and things like that. How was your phase during that time, Shubashri? I know I can understand the background in which you are doing your PhD with all the hardships which you are now associating. But it also sometimes become a very nice escape intellectually, especially physics. From my own personal perspective, I felt that that's a great way to actually sometimes switch off from the noise. Sometimes what is usually called as the actual signal becomes a noise, and vice versa. And physics is a great way to really include yourself into a different stream of thought. Give us a gist. I know I've asked a little more philosophical question, but I want to just know about this aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, so the way we worked was we would calculate a lot. We, we would it would not be computer related
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
at the
Mm.
time. So it was mostly book work. Uh, and Yeah, it was for that solitude was essential. But
Mm.
the thing is, you didn't piece together the puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Working on some tiny aspects of like if it's a huge machinery which needs to be assembled, you're looking more at the tiny bits and
Part
pieces.
of, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And so it was just that diagonalizing a matrix or
Mm,
thing
mm,
like that that we were more worried about at that
mhm,
time, the nuts and bolts of
mm, mm,
things. And that went on for a couple of years. And so I knew that I was working on this field theory of magnets.
mhm, mm,
And thinking about them as, excitations on a bed of spins floating around and things like that. So there was a lot of visualizing that you had to do.
mm,
And but it was still at the nuts and bolts level.
mm,
It was only when I wrote down the paper, and it was those occasions when I had to really piece together things and
mm.
form a larger picture of it. I didn't even realize in the beginning, in the first 2 years, how big a problem I was trying to solve. Like,
Solve. Mhm.
yeah. So that came to me, dawned on, once that dawned on me, that was even more adding to all the other
All
tension.
the, all the pressures.
Like, oh my God, this
Mhm.
is a Nobel Prize winning problem. Why am I doing this? Am I capable of it? Yeah, that imposter syndrome was very much
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Like one never had the confidence that, unlike my guide who probably had, I didn't have
Mm,
the confidence that, I can do this problem or something like that. So after third year, that also became a problem that
mm,
this is
mm,
a huge thing that we are doing and all that. But As far as piecing together goes, I think the intellectual journey was from, it was a linear thing for a long time, and then suddenly it
Mm,
escalated. So then there was this revelation of what the problem is and all that.
mm,
And then again, writing down my thesis, that was another thing which I enjoyed very much.
mm,
It
mm,
was like in my sixth year or something. I took a long time.
mm,
So that time, actually writing the introduction, reviewing the
mm,
subject,
mm, mm.
all that happened at that time. I
Nice,
don't know
nice.
whether this is the right way to do things, but that's how it worked for me.
But it's a very enjoyable phase, actually, to be very frank. I also find that doing that background reading, trying to understand the problems from a broader perspective, actually is a very fascinating period. Sometimes students do not pay attention to that part of it, but you would learn a lot more than what the problem is at your hand, and it gives a broader perspective. Were you also thinking about writing for the broader audience then, or was it later?
No, not at that time. It was later. I never had the confidence. Somehow the whole process had destroyed my
Mm,
self belief quite a bit. Self esteem was very low.
mm.
And maybe there was some kind of ego which propped me up. This whole thing is an ego enterprise after all,
Yes,
meeting
absolutely.
papers and things like that, seeing your name in print and
Mm, mm,
all that. So maybe those external things were propping me up, but
mm, mm,
internally I was quite uh, I wouldn't say it's a negative thing. I think probably going to pieces like that was what,
mm.
it was very necessary for me to develop a certain sensitivity which helps in literature and,
Yeah, yeah.
even in uh, being sensitive to the world, to people other than my own immediate
Mm,
interests and motivations. I think that destruction is very important, and that happened to me during my PhD, for which I'm kind of grateful in a weird way.
mm, mm.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, it's such an important point what you're mentioning. Sometimes perspectives are lost because of the fact that your viewpoints are narrow. It
Mm,
might sound a little counterintuitive, but this happens a lot among scientists. No doubt, you need to be an expert, and the reason for becoming a scientist is also to go into a stream so that you would be able to narrow your focus onto one part. But there is sometimes a cost to pay for that viewpoint, especially when it comes to societal aspect. I'm no way saying that scientists do not worry about society. They do, but there is also a phase where, in the process of becoming somebody who is an expert, you sometimes lose the generalization. It I mean, this is my viewpoint. I'm not generalizing it to everybody per se.
mm,
That also makes your own journey very unique, Shubashri, because I felt that that's another reason why I thought that somebody who actually has this perspective, both as a person who has anchored herself in science, but also has been looking at the world, not only as a scientist, but also a person who can understand science and give a broader picture of the world. Uh, so was that also something which was necessary for you to go ahead and transform yourself? Because I'm very curious about that transition. Of course, you told me that you went to HRI thereafter, and how was that experience? And tell us a little bit more after that period.
yeah. So, HRI, shall I tell you about HRI now?
Yeah, yeah. Please, please, please do.
HRI was mostly reading literature, that is
Mm,
both in terms of physics and in terms of general literature. I did not publish. I published one paper which was a um, some. We had just finished doing some work at math science, and I continued with that writing of that paper in HRI. So that paper came out, but I hadn't got too many results during that time. I was working out a lot of things, but nothing worked out. So that was a very bleak period.
mm,
Um, so during that time, I did think about what I should be doing and so on. And that was when the transition really happened. I think that. I knew that this was like a dead end for me. And
mm.
uh, maybe all the pressures that I talked about during my PhD had kind of finally culminated in this. I really don't know the answer to that, but mm,
Very interesting.
yeah.
Right.
But one thing I had told you about this breaking up of things inside. Uh,
Mm, mm,
I always feel that in education, it's important for you for like we are now we are making things very easy for children to study. We want to make it enjoyable and all that. But learning comes at a pain, I think.
mm,
I don't think learning happens without a cost. And the cost is a bit of a pain that you have to give yourself. I don't mean physical pain or
mm.
like beating a child or something like that. I don't mean that definitely. But what I mean is there has to be a certain hardship that you have to bear in order to break your own barriers and move on to the next stage. And I think that is what was happening to me during the PhD also.
PhD. Yeah, yeah.
And the knowledge that I gained was not only in science, but also in terms of society and
Mm,
how to, like, seeing the flaws in the system and trying to write about it and all that. So the Mehta Research Institute, Harishchandra Research Institute
mm,
was a sort of transition period when this was happening within me. There was all this tumult, and
mm,
as I told you, home scene was not great with my father
mm,
having his heart attacks and all that, and so on. So we had to be quite careful. So, and I was wondering about jobs and all that. So then I broke away from science
mm.
and went into copy editing. No, actually, my first job was at Bits Pilani.
Oh, okay.
I
Mm,
taught there for one semester and I felt that teaching physics is not my thing.
mm.
Then I left that job and came down to Chennai and started working as a copy editor. And then when I was after 2 or 3 years of that, I realized that there's more I have to give the world. There's all
Mm.
this thing brewing inside me, which I want to write. I don't just want to edit other people's copies. I want to give my own copy out. So then I joined this S. Ramasation Writing Fellowship in Indian Academy of Sciences. For a
Mm.
year, I was writing for them and also writing for other small magazines. And then I applied to the Hindu for a job and I got it. Then for 10 years, I had a stint at the Hindu.
We'll come to that. We'll come to that. That's where we learnt about Shubashrees, and that is a this is a remarkable shift, Shubashrees, because I mean, for you as a personal thing, you might feel okay. I just made a transition, but it is not a very straightforward thing because we see students and having gone through the whole journey as an academic, at least up to this particular stage, taking yourself and putting it because they, as you mentioned, there's an element of ego in intellectual pursuit, especially post PhD level. There is it comes into your mind. In fact, it sometimes is voluntary and sometimes it might not be implicit.
Mm.
Uh, and it also needs a very fine tuning of mind because you're really putting yourself out and you're also looking at things from a different perspective. So did you also kind of consult anybody or talk to somebody while making this transition, or was it totally your own choice to take this call of moving? Did somebody really help you to think through this particular part of it?
Yeah, there were few people. In fact, I didn't have dearth of friends.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay.
So there was in math science there were many young faculty who were willing to talk to me. There was Murthy,
Hmm.
MVN Murthy. There
MBN.
was
Okay.
Ramanujam.
Nice.
All of them. Ramanujam was that time involved in something called Arivoli Iyakam,
Mm,
which is
mm.
Arivoli literally means the lamp of knowledge.
Knowledge. Yeah. Yeah.
So he was in this was a literacy movement in Tamil
Mm,
Nadu at that time. So I would talk to these people about, and then there was, of course, Indu was there.
Mm.
Indumati was my senior by a few years.
Okay, okay. Mm.
And she was more like a role model because she was, at that time, she was just finishing. And then when I
Mm.
had all my problems and all that,
Mm.
she
Mm.
was just finishing and moving on to her PA, postdoc, and things like that. But she was a very nice person to talk to. And then my classmate, my batchmate Mary was there,
Mm.
who
Mm.
was a solid friend throughout the years. But she
Nice.
finished early, and she did optics with
Mm.
Simon.
Simon, yes, yes. Well done.
And
Yeah.
then, but
Mm.
unfortunately, she did not pursue her research beyond that. So, um, so there was all this support.
Okay. Support. Okay. Nice. Nice. So tell
Also,
us
yeah, one
about,
more
yeah.
person I forgot
Yeah.
to tell. There was my cousin who had by
Mm.
then become a
Doctor?
psychiatrist.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he was a
Nice, nice.
psychiatrist. So ideally suited to cry on the shoulder types. So I have cried immense buckets on his shoulder. His name is Rangarajan.
Nice.
He's now a very well-known psychiatrist in Chennai.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's so important. You also are naming them because the role of fellow human being is very very underestimated sometimes. It doesn't really come into foray, but it's so critical. That's something which is very important. So tell us about your stint. Now, you how did you get into Hindu? That is an interesting phase to also grasp. Yeah.
Okay, so I wrote, they had a children's magazine
Mm,
called The Hindu in School.
mm,
It's not a magazine, it's a newspaper for children, basically. So I used to write on Mars expeditions, and
mm,
there was this Mars rover and all happening, and
mm,
then Higgs boson discovery. So all these things were right up my alley. So I
mm, mm,
uh, on these things for them as a freelancer. And then there's this person called Kannal Achudan over there. I told her I'm interested in joining the Hindu. Is there anything like an opening
mm,
here? And then she said there could be, and she spoke to the
mm.
editor, and she said, "Why don't you apply?" And then I wrote to them, and I got the job there.
Wow, wonderful. That's a, you know, it's a old institution where it has kept the standards, and it's one of the few portals which I still pay to read. By the way, I have to
Ah,
mention, because
absolutely worthwhile.
yeah,
If there's
yeah,
anything I see, your job takes your career takes you to different places, and I had to move out of the Hindu, but I still
mm,
have a very fond memory of working there. There were all kinds of things there, but
mm,
particularly writing science, they're
yeah,
so encouraging of that. They have
yeah.
so much space for science, which I really appreciate
Yeah,
in.
yeah. In fact, day before yesterday, I think I saw that the front page on the web page was actually a science article. I was delighted to see that. I hardly see that, unfortunately, in other places. Yeah, because most of the cases it is the science becomes just a small link in the
Yeah.
core. But
It
somebody
has to have
really,
some relevance, it has to have
yeah,
application and all that.
yeah,
They
yeah.
don't respect science for just the science.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. No, I understand because there are other pressing news they would want to highlight. But once in a while, science makes really important things to the to the public, and of course, it gets a lot of traction when it is a very big event, like let's say Chandrayaan and other kind of things, which it totally deserves it. But there are also many other things which happen in that domain, which equally is important. So we'll broaden the scope, Shubashri, a little bit more. Of course, I'll come to your current job also in a while, but I want to also get your thoughts on this process of writing science for a broader audience. This is something which is becoming more and more important, and correctly so, because it's so critical for the public to understand science. What are your thoughts? What do you think one should probably think and do as, let's say, scientists and people who are in science? And second point is from a viewpoint of a journalist and also kind of looking at the public at large. Give us gist of both these parts of it. First, the scientist and the people who are involved in research. What is the major things which you see that there is something lacking, which deserves to be actually changed? And the other part is the, of course, the journalist and the public viewpoint. Yeah.
So the thing about science writing is that subjects like astronomy and
Mm,
astrophysics are pretty popular subjects. They already appeal to the imagination, and
mm.
they naturally lend themselves to be popularized.
Popular. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of material on this, but there's very little on, say, Hall effect, or I
Mm.
mean, I'm not saying Hall effect, but condensed matter physics. So there's so
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so glad you're telling this. Yeah. Yeah.
like mathematics again. Number theory is so popular,
Yeah.
but and rest of it is just not. So we need to. I think one thing that researchers can definitely do is to develop new idioms and
Mm.
new what do you call them? Uh,
Platforms or
metaphors.
metaphors. Metaphors. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Metaphors that can capture public imagination, that kind of thing, the kind of descriptive language that can language is where we should work at actually,
Mm. Mm.
about how to communicate these other subjects to audience and make them feel good about it.
This is a point I always wanted to understand a little bit more. See, especially if you are probably the right person to really answer this, because physics has a very mathematical and also graphical way of representation. For example, even if you look at experimental physics, there's a lot of maths involved, and also a lot of geometry involved, a lot of representation, etc. And of course, theoretical physics has a lot of mathematics in its kind of kind of discourse in terms of either papers or even to explain phenomena. But the general public is more tuned. For example, famously, Stephen Hawking had mentioned every equation you put in a book brings down the price of your book, something like that. Like, right? So this is a dilemma for a lot of people who do quantitative way of writing and thinking. There is as you correctly mentioned, language has a very powerful way of expression. But equally, there are graphical and also equation-based approach, which has been extensively used in science. In fact, a lot of students, including a lot of scientists, have a difficulty in switching from one viewpoint to this language, mainly language-anchored viewpoint. What are your thoughts, Shubashrees? How should one approach to this particular problem?
See, I think an either or approach is a bit lazy, I think.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So it has to be a bit of both.
Mm.
And an example, living example of this is Anil Ananthaswamy's latest
Yeah.
book,
Yeah.
Why Machines
Why
Learn.
machine learning? Oh, amazing book. Amazing book.
It's
Yeah.
an amazing book with a lot of equations in it,
Yeah.
but it's also, got so much of history. If you don't
Yeah.
want the equations, you can skip that and read.
Yeah.
He's worked a lot in making the book readable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's
Absolutely.
so much of history that one can get from that,
Mm.
which you can
Mm.
use in your teaching if you were a teacher. The
Absolutely.
book lends itself to different
Mm.
professionals reading it. So that is an example of how science writing should be approached, I
Mm.
think. Perhaps readers should not shy away from equations also, but you
Mm. Mm.
need to cultivate that readership.
Mm. Mm.
So it's not something that you can do in one article or something like that. It's
Yes.
a method that you need to persist and go on and build up your readership. That's what I think.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very pertinent and a very appropriate point, because then yeah, it also gives room for people to use metaphors, as you mentioned, in a very crude sense. Mathematical thinking is also a metaphor, at least in physics, right? Because you're taking viewpoint and kind of expressing it in terms of symbolisms and etc. That's a very interesting way of looking at it. Could you give us also a gist about the kind of writing you have been doing, including the poetry and your interest in that, and also the kind of projects you are involved in, and what are the kind of stuff you have been looking at?
Poetry. I just started writing poetry as an outlet.
Mm, mm,
That was during my PhD days,
mm.
and in Tamil I started, but
Oh, okay, okay.
later on it kind of. I think now I write more in English than in Tamil.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, very recently I also read a couple of them you put on Facebook. I did read it. Very, very nice ones. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. But do you put it on your blog page, which I'll be anyway linking? You also,
No, I don't put. I some I have put, but not too
yeah,
many
yeah. So
because
listeners and viewers, I would urge you to look up the link which is in the description. It will have the link to the Shubashree's blog page. Please have a look at it. Yeah. Mhm.
so I'll do that in future if that's a
Yeah,
good idea because I write more poetry than anything else these days, apart from
that'll be
writing.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That'll be wonderful. That'll be wonderful to read. Yeah, yeah.
So now there was another transition I made when going from
Mm,
Hindu to
yeah.
this is from news writing to features writing.
Mm, mm,
So that is a process I'm still underway.
mm,
My editor rewrites a lot of what I write, but so that's a learning process also to think more like a journalist, to think as a storyteller.
mm,
So there are these brilliant books, Chaos.
mm. James Glick. Mm.
Yes, that's prescribed reading apparently, but it's
Uh,
a wonderful book.
oh, amazing, amazing. In fact, James Gleep's works are totally outstanding. He's written about Feynman. There's a book called Genius,
Oh,
and
I haven't.
there's a book on information, which is also fantastic. Very, very great. Yeah, yeah. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so what were we talking about? And
Yeah, this you are now making another transition. That's what you were
yeah,
talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
another transition is
Uh,
from news to features,
uh,
and that is really something quite phenomenal. A news article is typically 500 words long.
yeah, yeah.
Feature article is about 2,500 words to 2,000 to 3,000 words long,
Mm, mm,
short one. It can go however long your editor allows it to go.
yeah. Kind of New Yorker mode. It is going towards New Yorker
Yeah,
mode.
yeah, yeah. That is
Yeah.
one of the crosses I have to bear. Look at New
Uh,
York every day. But yeah, that's a lot of fun because
yeah,
weaving
right.
a complex story, there's
Yeah.
nothing as satisfying as writing a complex story, actually.
Absolutely.
So one of my dreams is to write a novel one day. Not one,
Wonderful.
but I want to make a profession of writing novels.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Thanks. So there is,
Sci-fi or
oh, there are so many people writing sci-fi. I don't think I
yeah.
have write sci-fi, but I
Yeah.
would like to. But the idea has to be novel enough. No, that's
Yeah.
a big challenge now.
Challenge. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
everything's been time travel has been done to death.
Not condensed matter, Shubashri. There's a
Yeah,
lot of room there. A lot of
that
people talk
is
about multi dimensions, etc. Science wise, it's very fascinating, of course, but there's a lot of room for people to explore the tiny elements. There is a lot of more. I think there's a great scope there. Yeah,
that's a
wonderful.
good idea you've given me. I'll think
Yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of amazing. And what is your general writing process? How do you approach writing? Like you're now a seasoned person, national award winner. You should also tell for what you actually got it. Could you please tell us a little bit, and then your writing process?
It was for 5 years work
Mm,
done. So after I joined the Hindu in 2016, I realized that I had completed 5 years of journalism.
wonderful.
It is actually a bit early. It's like a lifetime achievement award actually.
Mm.
But I
Okay.
got people like Sujata, writer Sujata.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So uh, I don't know whether I deserved it. No, that's
No,
that
no, no.
imposter syndrome. I don't know, but I really don't know. But I just applied for it, and
Mm,
I had to send. You're supposed to send your profile with
mm.
all your writings, and I made a book of all that I had written up, and I had sent
Nice.
the president of Indian Academy of Sciences to
Mm,
consider,
mm, mm.
and they forwarded it, and that was how I got the award.
Wonderful.
And
No,
yeah,
excellent. Your writing process.
my writing process. Um, So I nowadays what I've taken to doing for the features,
Mm.
earlier it was different, but now for the features it is like I make notes about, there are many aspects to it, right? Like one story will have some 5 or 6 characters you're talking about. You
Yeah,
would have
yeah.
spoken to at least 15 people by the time you write the story. And of the 15, at least 5 will feature in your story.
Mm, mm,
So you write down the names and uh, you can write down the names in a random arrangement in a paper,
mm,
and then you can write down, structure it first. I try to draw lines between these people to that
mm.
flow from one to the other. I also like to draw, so that helps. So I
Nice. Yeah.
draw a picture of how the story evolves,
Mm, mm.
and that helps me to write down the story little by little.
Little bit. Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So, it's all on computer, or do you use pen and
No, pen
paper?
and
Yeah.
paper. I
Ah,
There is something very special about pen and paper.
absolutely.
I
I'm so
realized that
glad. I'm a very everybody who knows me. I'm an ardent pen and paper supporter.
really, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
something
Because
so tactile about it. No,
yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
something special
Absolutely.
about it.
Yeah.
So recently started keeping a journal also,
Mm, mm,
where I write in longhand
mm.
pages every day.
Nice, nice.
This is advocated by Julia Cameron.
Yeah, yeah. Morning pages, something. Yeah,
Morning pages. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
write 3 pages of free. As soon as I
Right.
wake up, I write 3 pages, and then
Nice.
after 9 weeks or something, you're supposed to look back and
Uh, reflect on.
underline all the repeating patterns, and you can get
Mm.
your novel out of it.
Ah, nice, nice.
That's the
Wonderful.
plan.
Fantastic, fantastic, Shubashri. In fact, this is given as a glimpse of a lot of things in terms of what you're
Thank
interested
you.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I am very thankful to you, and all the very best for your future ventures, what you want to explore. And we'll look forward to a lot of your writing and your journalism. And currently, Shastra is also kind of bloomed into a very, very interesting kind platform for science news, and also feature articles, which is a IIT Madras is housing that, right?
Yes.
It's a very nice initiative. I wish there can be more of that kind across India, and hopefully a lot of things will emerge out of it.
I don't
Yeah.
see why not, because there are
Mm.
enough science writers now. They weren't when I started out, but
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
there were just a few very illustrious people in a
Yeah.
few
Yeah.
magazines. But now there are lots of young writers who are aspiring to write.
Absolutely. Psychom has become a very important part of public discourse. I see the Science Festival and other things which also happens, and in Pune also it happened very nicely. A lot of interesting stuff happening, and I think public at large realizes how important it is. In fact,
Yes.
that realization is so important, so critical, and you are at the heart of such kind of things. So, congratulate, and also, look forward. That is the main point. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity to share my ideas and thoughts.
It's absolutely my pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Subhashri.
Yeah.
This is
Thank you.
Pratidwani, where we try to humanize science, this time with the one and the only Shubashri Desikan. Thank you, Shubashri.
Thank you, Pawan.